Temperatures will dip away a little bit on Tuesday evening under largely clear skies, but then we look at another chunk of rain coming in, turning things pretty soggy as we head through the early hours across much of England and Wales. Some uncertainty about the timing of when this will come in and clear away from the east on Wednesday. It'll be followed by brighter skies and showers. Plenty of showers for northwest England, Wales, and lots of showers for western Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's still pretty gusty here as well. Temperatures just drop down a little, but still double digits across the south is a little above average for the time of year. So temperatures, as I say, not as high as Monday, but still reasonably mild. Signs of things turning colder in the run-up to Christmas, at least across the north. Bye for now.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instinct was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No censorship. I'm Dan Wootton Tonight. Christmas has come early for Superwoman Suella Braverman, who put the revival of the Rwanda scheme at the very top of her list.
I'd love to be having a front page of the Telegraph with a plane taking off to Rwanda. That's my dream.
So after the High Court gives the green light, will sending migrants to Rwanda be a turning point in the battle for Britain's borders, or will lefty saboteurs strike again? I'll give my verdict in the digest before I open the floor to my superstar panel, Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Suzanne Evans. And at 9:35, the ever-outspoken Laurence Fox breaks down a new bombshell report suggesting that 1 million migrants could soon be arriving in Britain every year. Are Harry and Meghan using racism to distract from the fact they've destroyed their own popularity? And has the Duke of Sussex been emasculated by entering his wife's woke world? My star guest tonight, the most cancelled man of 2022, says yes on both accounts.
And we know it's her fault. It's nothing to do with your skin color. We just don't like you.
Don't miss online sensation Andrew Tate's full-on verdict. He's live with me at 10:15. Plus, should the Sussexes be granted a summit by the Royals like palace racism accuser Ngozi Fulani? Royal insider Lady Victoria Harvey, sportsman Peter Shilton and broadcaster Alan Cochrane step up for tonight's clash at 9:20. And I want your verdict as ever. And if you're wondering if Harry and Meghan could make themselves any more unbearable, the answer is yes, by teaming up with the world's biggest whiners for a Netflix wokeathon.
This was inspired by Nelson Mandela.
We will never forgive you.
I won't be watching, but we'll have more of that and the rest of today's viral stories in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Plus, after Gary Neville closes the World Cup of Wokery by comparing Qatar human rights abuses to the government's treatment of strikers.
Can't have that. That shouldn't happen here with the wealth that exists, but it shouldn't happen in our country that our nurses are having to fight for an extra £1 or an extra £2 either.
Football legend Matt Le Tissier is uncancelled and tackling England's biggest virtue signaller at 10:45. Plus, who is really to blame for Christmas chaos? Cold-hearted Tories, to quote the Daily Mirror, or the unions themselves? That's our big debate at 10, and it's the festive tradition no one asked for, as doctors once again launch a COVID terror campaign, and almost 1 in 5 Brits admit they still feel unsafe in public. So given all of that, have lockdown fanatics permanently damaged society? Neil Oliver weighs in at 9:50. We'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press as ever, and a brand new Greatest Britain Union jackass on the way too. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. My opinion in just a moment, but first the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. The Prime Minister has been praising the selfless dedication and bravery of British troops currently serving in Estonia. Rishi Sunak has served Christmas lunch to troops with the Estonian Prime Minister as they chatted to UK servicemen and women. The UK has doubled its military presence in Estonia in response to the build-up of Russian forces around Ukraine. Mr Sunak's trip comes as he calls on European leaders to stand firm in their support for Ukraine. Here, the Home Secretary says she's committed to the Rwanda deportation plan after the High Court ruled it is lawful. Speaking in the House of Commons earlier on today, Suella Braverman said the plan is a humane and practical alternative for those who come to the UK through dangerous and illegal routes. The Royal Courts of Justice ruled the policy is consistent with the International Refugee Convention. Charities, however, have vowed to appeal today's decision. But the Home Secretary says we cannot tolerate people coming here illegally.
Being relocated to Rwanda is not a punishment, but an innovative way of addressing a major problem to redress the imbalance between illegal and legal migration routes. It will also ensure that those in genuine need of international protection are provided with it in Rwanda.
In the United States, the committee investigating the January the 6th Capitol Hill riots has referred the former President Donald Trump for prosecution. In its final public meeting, it unanimously voted that Mr Trump should be charged with 4 crimes, including conspiracy to defraud the US and insurrection. The decision is now down to the Justice Department, which can press criminal charges. Mr Trump has dismissed the allegations he faces as politically motivated and says the committee, which is dominated by Democrats, is biased against him. 23-year-old Gabrielle Hutchinson has become the second woman to die following the crowd crush outside the O2 Academy, Brixton, last Thursday. The Metropolitan Police said she was working as part of the security team at the venue. The force also said 3 women who were critically injured were all in the foyer of the building at the time of the crush. A third woman, aged 21, remains in hospital in a critical condition. And lastly, a student has been charged with threatening behaviour after eggs were thrown at the King during a trip to York last month. The King and Queen consort were on a trip to unveil a statue in honour of the late Queen, when 4 eggs were thrown at the royals, all of which just missed. 23-year-old Patrick Thelwell has been charged with threatening behaviour under the Public Order Act and will appear at York Magistrates Court next month. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton tonight.
Superwoman Suala's dream of securing the borders via the Rwanda scheme is tonight one step closer to fruition.
I would love to be here saying, well, claiming victory. I would love to be having a front page of the Telegraph with a plane taking off to Rwanda. That's my dream. That's my dream. It's
when
my
will
obsession.
that happen?
It's taken far too long, and lefty lawyers are going to do all they can to delay the process by tying it up in challenges at the Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, and probably in the end, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg for many months longer. But today's High Court decision that the Rwanda scheme is legal is a massive boost for the Conservative government's desire to smash the illegal people smuggling via the Channel, causing an invasion of over 40,000 migrants via our southern border this year alone. The hard-left human rights charities doing all they can to scupper the clear legal judgment risk having more blood on their hands. Remember, because you won't hear this on the British Bashing Corporation or on Sly News, stopping the boats is the humane thing to do, because it will also stop the deaths that we saw last week. Judge Lord Justice Lewis announced after a 5-day hearing it is lawful for the government to make arrangements for relocating asylum seekers to Rwanda and for their asylum claims to be determined in Rwanda rather than the UK. Significantly, the court also ruled that the scheme does not breach the Refugee Convention or human rights laws. The Rwanda scheme, first announced by Priti Patel under Prime Minister Boris Johnson in April, needs to be up and running, though, to provide the deterrent. More people will arrive and tens of thousands more will stream into our country illegally while this decision is caught up in the courts. As Red Wall, Tory MP Jonathan Gull has said, I hope lefty lawyers don't play games and delay these flights from taking off. Instead, they should respect not just today's judgment, but also the law of the land, which was passed by our sovereign parliament and democratically elected government. And we're going to need to do more deals, you know, with other countries for offshore processing to become commonplace. It's only once illegal migrants realise that they will never step foot in the UK if they risk their lives across the Channel, that they will stop shelling out thousands to the vile human traffickers who disgustingly treat these folk like cattle. Today, the Prime Minister stood by the Rwanda decision but stressed it's only part of the plan to tackle what I declared a national emergency over a year ago.
Welcome the decision of the court today. We've always maintained that our Rwanda policy is lawful. I'm pleased that was confirmed today. And this is just one part of our plan to tackle illegal migration. Last week I set out a very comprehensive approach to stopping the boats from coming to the UK. It's not going to be easy and we're not going to be able to do it overnight, but I'm confident that with the steps I laid out last week, we really can get to grips with illegal migration.
By contrast, Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, branded the Rwanda scheme as a damaging distraction, saying it is, quote, unworkable, unethical and extortionately expensive. So while the Tories desperately try to secure our borders a sorry mess of their own making, be assured that under Labour, we are facing an open borders hellscape. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter for the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the political commentator Suzanne Evans. So Carol, look, tell me about your jumper. Joy? The French word for joy is this?
I should first of all is tell our viewers that what you said was you're not wearing that, are you, when you to go on television. That's what you actually said. I explained it's Christmas, it's joyeux.
No, I said, are you wearing that? I think you look stunning.
Well, you're saying that now. You weren't saying that outside in the corridor.
She lies. She lies. But, Carol, my point is, this would be joy today for Suella Braverman.
Yes, it will be, but also massive frustration because our Prime Minister refused to commit to a plane taking off before the next election in 2024. I mean, what's all this for? Yes, it's got to go through the appeal court, it'll probably go to the Supreme Court, and then it may even go to the AHCR, which is another reason why we should get out of that. It was one off-duty judge in Strasbourg, whose name has been kept hidden, who actually scuppered this plan back in June. We don't know who he is yet. This guy has allowed many thousands more people to come into this country because of that. The lefty lawyers, whatever. And what worries me is that if we're not going to get the first plane off before 2024, we know Labour are probably going to get in the next election, which means it's never, ever going to happen. So tens of thousands are going to come. But the point of this is if we could look like we're doing it and get at least one plane off, what that means, that would cut the people coming on the boats by 40% as a stroke, because people from Albania are not going to come here thinking they might, from a safe country, thinking they're going to be sent to Rwanda for the next year and a half to be processed. They won't even bother coming. But, Yvette Cooper said there it was unworkable and expensive. It's not unworkable. It's only unworkable because the left keep on interfering with it. And it's a damn sight more expensive to house the tens of thousands we've got coming in here every week.
Suzanne, do you think our left-wing justice system is now working against the people of Britain?
I'm not convinced we have a left-wing justice system. I think there are inevitably some left-wing judges and some that aren't, and I think you could look at the whole legal profession as a whole and question how people are appointed to their position, and I think more importantly how it's pretty much impossible to get rid of them, and I think that needs looking at. But I've been quite heartened that this judge has actually ruled that this was lawful, which of course the government has been saying all along. But I think Carol makes an excellent point. Is this actually going to happen, or is this just more rhetoric on immigration from the Tories, which we have heard again and
Problem
again?
is, though, this
and
isn't
again.
the Tories' fault, though. It's the fault of our justice system, because this is going to be tied up.
Well, it's not
for
really
months and months and months in the courts.
Yeah, but I mean, OK, they've got the right to appeal to this, but that's only 3 weeks. In theory, this could happen well before the next election.
Suzanne, I think the lefties will drag it out because they know the longer they drag this out, they could take it to the next election, and then it's not going to happen.
Well, look, I've been saying, Benjamin, haven't I, for months, my big problem is that Rishi Sunak is not prepared to commit to leaving ECHR, because I think it's going to come to that. I think the only way that we can do offshore processing is by leaving the ECHR.
Well, you might want to side with Russia and Belarus, but I'm quite happy to not be on their side.
What do you mean?
The only countries
come on, we
who
have
have
right
left...
back
But that doesn't mean I'm siding with them. That doesn't mean I'm siding with Russia and Belarus.
And you know
what
what,
a ridiculous claim.
I think anyone who genuinely loves freedom should be terrified by someone who is trying to undermine and question the legal defences of human rights, which is what we're talking about in regards to
the judge has ruled today it's not against human rights.
But
He
what
says
you're
it's not
saying
against.
is that the courts that it goes through and the legal process is something that we
slow.
should be scared of, and that is
It's
not
too slow. It's too slow.
I'm sorry that I think the justice and the protection of human rights isn't something that should be compromised.
Ben, you can't keep on talking about human
And the
rights.
second point.
The judge has ruled today it does not contravene human rights.
What I'm talking about is the fact that Dan says the very fact it goes through that process is a problem. And actually,
no, I'm talking about the time that it takes. But look, do you dispute what Lord Justice Lewis said today?
Well, I mean, it's a legal decision, so it's about whether it abides by the laws that we have, which is, different to a moral judgment.
I tell you, Ben, who isn't abiding by the laws that we have, and that's the people traffickers. And I'm sorry, but that kind of argument that you're making absolutely
aids and
sides
abets
with them. Aids and abets them, enables them to do their job. These people are absolute villains, preying on people, charging them a fortune. They don't care whether they live or die when they cross the channel, and that has got to be stopped. And one thing I did agree with both Priti Patel and Yvette Cooper, funnily enough, today, was that they said this is, Priti Patel says this is one policy. One policy is not going to solve that problem.
No.
And Yvette Cooper did make the point we've got to tackle these criminal gangs who are doing the trafficking.
Precisely, and that's why there should be a legal way for these people to claim refuge, such as having a processing centre in France. Because the truth is, so long as you do not... Let me finish my remarks. So long as you do not have a legal and safe route for these people to enter the country, then they will be in the hands of the smugglers. And that's the situation that we have.
It's a red herring. Safe and legal routes, complete red herring. We put those in place. People are still going to bypass them because they think they're going to have a better chance chucking their passports overboard, saying they don't know where they come from and doing it through the back door. I'm afraid, the safe and legal routes.
And also, we do not have the space. We do not have the room in this country.
We don't have the housing. We don't have the housing.
We desperately need more migrants in this country.
If they're taking... Well, you're assuming that a lot of the migrants coming over are going to work. We don't know that for the case. But we know that there's not enough because they're taking over hotels, they're taking over holiday camps, they're taking over university halls because there's nowhere else to put them.
And they're chucking homeless people out. Just this week, they've kicked out 8 homeless people from their accommodation to house migrants. It's totally unacceptable.
It's just interesting that your solution is the same as the Labour solution, which is throw open the borders. It is an effective open borders policy. It's complete nonsense. What Labour wants.
It's complete nonsense, Dan. And
of course, how else do you reduce illegal immigration without offshore processing?
There were far lower levels of illegal immigration and far fewer people sitting in hotels or whatnot under the last Labour government than what we've had for many years under this Tory government. The problem has got significantly worse. And the truth is that you want to talk about the Rwanda policy because that is the Tories' rhetoric to try and detract from the fact that they can't actually find a solution to this problem. £140 million and not one person taken out of the country.
They have got a solution to the problem.
They have got a solution to the problem.
That
money on caseworkers to deal with those...
keep on stopping the migrants being taken out. They come up with schemes all the time to stop the law being
Although, by the way, Benjamin, I know you're a regular viewer of the show.
Well, you've been making your point a lot.
You will know that I've been talking about the past 14 months that the Tories do not have a solution to this problem. I've been incredibly tough on the lack of a solution by the Tory government to this policy.
They need to turn back the boats.
Benjamin, final word, Benjamin.
Are you joking me? You've done nothing but get word out over the past 5 minutes. You've done nothing but speak, Ben.
Final word to Benjamin.
Final word to Benjamin. 140 million quid on caseworkers to process these people faster that shouldn't be here, then there'd be fewer people here.
What, you mean the caseworkers working from home who managed to process one a week?
Exactly.
One a week.
A few more civil service caseworkers, that will do the trick. Benjamin Butterworth, Suzanne Evans, Carol Malone. Wow, they're on fire for the last time in 2022, and they're here with me all night. But coming up, should Britain accept that 1 million legal migrants a year will soon become the norm, as warned by a new report? Laurence Fox grapples with that at 9:35. But first, should the Sussexes be granted a summit by the royals like palace racism accuser Ngozi Fulani, royal insider Lady Victoria Harvey, sportsman and football legend Peter Shilton and the broadcaster Alan Cochrane duke it out on the clash straight after the break? But what do you think on this? Dan at gbnews.uk is my email. You can tweet me at gbnews. Our poll running there too. The results and the clash straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's time for The Clash. Now, despite Harry and Meghan dropping a 6-hour hit piece on Netflix, the royals aren't biting, and it's driving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex mad. But while retaining a dignified silence in the face of relentless attacks, the palace drew a line under the recent Lady Susan Hussey race row at the weekend by instigating a meeting between the late Queen Elizabeth II's former lady-in-waiting and charity boss Ngozi Fulani. 83-year-old Hussey offered her sincere apologies for what's described as an unfortunate conversation and promised to learn more about the sensitivities around asking someone about where they're from. And of course, that positive press hasn't gone down well with the Montecito Moaners, who, according to a source, have slammed it as a double standard, telling the Sunday Times nothing like that was ever done when Harry and Meghan raised various concerns. No meeting, formal apology or taking responsibility or accountability. That is hard to swallow. 100% yes, they'd like to have a meeting. But Buckingham Palace believes the onus should be on the Duke to make the first move, with sources telling The Telegraph he knows where his family is and how to get in touch if he wants to repair the relationship. So what do you think? Should Harry and Meghan be granted a summit by the royals like palace racism accuser Ngozi Fulani? Down at gbnews.uk, vote in our poll at GB News. But to weigh in on this now, the socialite and aristocrat Lady Victoria Harvey, the England football legend Peter Shilton, and the broadcaster Ellen Coughlin. Lady V, I mean, they want an apology and a summit?
I mean, that
Why?
sounds very pompous and grand, doesn't it? I mean, it's quite unbelievable, actually, that when I read that for the first time, that's what they're demanding. I think what happened, you know, just now with Lady Hussey, I think now that there's been an apology, she should get her job back.
Yes.
You know,
she was thrown under the bus.
It was completely blown out of proportion, and I think it's only because now Sister Space is being investigated that suddenly...
By the Charity Commission.
Suddenly she wants to go quiet, yeah. So, no, I think Meghan Markle and Prince Harry do not deserve that, or they should just give all their money back that they've made from slamming the family.
Now, Peter Shilton, you tweeted over the weekend, Meghan Markle was never going to be part of our royal family. She is an American actress who manipulated Harry to get what she wants, which is a big house in California and a big bank balance, playing every card, including the race card. And I have to say, Peter, I saw that tweet and I just thought, well done, you've got it in one. So presumably, Peter, you don't believe that they should get the summit at Buckingham Palace with the royal family?
I think they've already had that, the Queen's funeral. I mean, they were invited over, you know, they were invited on a walk around with you know, with William and Kate. You know, you know, yeah, I think from the minute they joined the royal family, I think, the country, you know, was welcoming. I think, you know, there was a big euphoria about it. The press, you know, was welcome to Meghan. You know, the royal family welcomed him. I mean, Charles even walked her down the aisle, invited her mum, all these sort of things. And then all of a sudden, you know, they want to go to Canada to get out the media's glaze. And no sooner had they done that they were in California doing a chat show with Oprah Winfrey. And that's where it all started. If they want peace and quiet, fine, you know, great. I don't particularly think that the royal family need to give them any apology, because as far as I can see, you know, they've already done that with the invite to the funeral anyway.
Good point. But Ellen Coughlin, you think actually this could be really productive, the royal family agreeing to a similar summit with Harry and Meghan? Why?
Yes, 100%. I feel like they were the victim, the exact same as Ngozi. She got the apology today, and I do think the palace done the absolute right thing with Ngozi by inviting her in. They acknowledged what went wrong. They invited her in. They apologised, and they said that they want to learn from their mistakes. Why can't they do that with Meghan? Wouldn't it be more important to do it with Meghan? Like, she's a member of the royal family. I think she deserves the same respect. And I think if they do invite Meghan to the palace and have an apology, then maybe they can move forward as a stronger unit. And I think that would be better all around. I'm sure Meghan and Harry would be more than happy to do that.
Isn't the issue, Alan, though, that assumes that Harry and Meghan are telling the truth about the racism that they claim they experienced? What evidence is there that they experienced racism from the royal family?
Well, but what evidence is there that they haven't? Why is everybody just automatically assuming that they're lying?
Well, because I think we believe in innocent until proven guilty, don't we, still? I know it's 2022, but, you know...
Mm-hmm. You could say the same for Meghan. She said that she suffered with mental health problems. She said that she had racist remarks said to her in the palace. But everybody's saying, oh, well, that couldn't have possibly happened, when it's actually just been proven that racist remarks do go on within the palace with this new apology. So why is it so hard to believe?
But doesn't she need to produce the evidence, though, Lady Victoria Harvey? Because the issue with Fulani, I mean, I think Fulani went in there with an agenda, right? But she had some evidence of a conversation. Meghan has no evidence of anything.
No, like Meghan, everything's made up. And as far as Ngozi, I mean, Marlene, I mean, it just felt like a setup from the beginning, and just the timing of it and everything. But yeah, with Meghan, it's just like, I mean, literally, like, she's Harry's handler, and she's just completely she controls him. And now they've got this other documentary now they're doing, right? And so it's just going on and on and on. They are just being complete puppets.
Peter, do you think that's fair to say that Meghan controls Harry?
Am I the only one that thinks
that? I think you can see from the footage, and it's. I think so. I think she wears the trousers. I think she's an actress. You know, she's been around. She's more experienced than Harry, and Harry's obviously deeply in love with her. I just think a lot of the things they say, as you said there, the word is proof. A lot of it's been innuendos, and eventually, they've moved out of the palace. They want a quiet life and done totally the opposite. And to me, that just shows what they really want. They want, or whether Harry wants that or Harry's just gone along with it. Have a peaceful life, but don't just keep slagging the royal family off, who have probably done everything they can to, as I say, to try and keep the situation going. And certainly, I would think Charles would want to see his grandkids and that sort of thing. And all they've done is hold the hand out. But all the aggro seems to be coming from Harry and Meghan, and it just smells of
And I think the next time they're going to
settle in the sense of this was planned. Certainly in my eyes, that Meghan had this.
Ellen, how do you respond to that?
No, I think there's two issues here with Meghan. There's definitely the race issue. I think the palace should 100% apologise for the Archie skin tone comment. If Meghan felt that was racist, then the palace need to learn from that and move on, like they've done with this previous situation. But also there's the issue of misogyny here as well with Meghan. There's massive misogynistic attacks on her all the time. And do you know what? Like, I don't blame them for leaving. I would have done the same thing.
Victoria, Lady V?
Yeah. Do I blame them for leaving? Well, I just think she's kind of tricked him into going to LA for this quiet life. Like, I think he's kind of going along for the ride, but I think he originally did go to California to have maybe a quieter life, and then she's sort of got this whole plan, all these TV shows and getting all this footage and selling this and selling that and just trying to make as much money as she can from being married to him. I'm kind of selling him the dream, the American dream, but it's like, you know, they're doing exactly what they told us they were not going to do. They were supposed to be going for
Exactly.
a quiet
I have
life,
to say, I think I'm with Peter on this. I think it was a setup right from the start, and the royal family have to protect themselves. I think they have to protect their reputation.
Dan, if I may say one thing,
yes, of course,
who takes videos on your first meeting?
Right.
If I was taking somebody out, I wouldn't start videoing us. And nearly every meeting we have videoing it. If I didn't have a plan in my mind, it's just not natural behaviour. You want privacy, you know. All right, people say, well, it was for your own album, but hold on a minute, not on the first day.
Get the camera up the moment that your bloke gets down on one knee.
But did you think it was strange that they would go to Soho House, which is like the media capital of like, that's where every journalist goes.
They wanted to be seen, didn't they? But look, I'm going to give Ellen Coughlin the final word because she's outnumbered tonight. Ellen, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, to be fair, Harry and Meghan always knew that they were going to set up a media company. So, like, as journalists, you know, we record everything, even if we're going to use it, even if we're not going to use it, we record it because someday it might become in use. They knew full well that this would become useful, and they knew what.
The money, the big Hollywood bucks, all part of the plan, as Peter Shilton claims. Great debate. Thank you all. Football legend Peter Shilton, Lady Victoria Harvey and the broadcaster Ellen Coughlin. Real pleasure. So who do you agree with? Should Harry and Meghan be granted a summit by the royals like palace racism accuser Ngozi Fulani? Reese on Twitter says ignore them unless they start causing actual harm with their actions. People will say they already have, but they haven't in truth. From Faye, no, and no. Harry and Meghan should be apologising to the UK. And Mark says if Harry and Meghan really want to distance themselves from the royal family, then perhaps they should just move on, which is something they seem incapable of doing. Their reluctance to do so makes me and many others question their sincerity. And your verdict is now wow, this one's overwhelming. Just 6% of you think that Harry and Meghan should be granted a summit by the royals, while 94% of you say Charles and William and Camilla and Kate should stand firm. Now, coming up, as NHS hysterics launch their traditional festive scare tactics, have lockdown fanatics damaged society? Neil Oliver gives his unique take at 9:50. But first, should Britain accept that 1 million legal migrants a year will become the norm? As warned by a bombshell new report, Laurence Fox gives his verdict straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time now for the Fox Report with our main man, Laurence Fox. And after the news that a staggering 1.1 million foreign nationals have come to live in the UK in just 12 months, a think tank has said 1 million migrants a year could now be the norm. So official migrant figures published last month showed net migration at a record 504,000. A report by the Social Market Foundation argued that these unprecedented figures will continue due to skills and labour shortages amid the ageing population. However, Laurence Fox, this isn't what you want. It's not what the vast majority of the British public want. 1 million a year. Can we handle that?
Well, certainly not with 7.9 million waiting lists on the NHS, Dan. No, we can't. It's a pipe dream. I understand that we're not recreating our own Brits at the 2.1%, that 2.1 per couple that we need to, but no, it's ridiculous and insane to promote mass migration, lack of assimilation. It's just insane.
Laurence, everyone is talking about net zero, right, in regards to the environment. But you know what I actually think would be a popular net zero policy? Net zero immigration. One in, one out.
Why not? And also, if you want to immigrate to Britain, get on a plane, apply, and then get on a plane and come here and emigrate. Don't sit on a rubber dinghy and sadly, in many cases, die in the English Channel and throw your mobile phones over the side and expect us to think that, you're legit. I'm sorry. I think we're done with this.
Well, indeed, and Laurence, on that note, there was a really shocking story in the Sun newspaper which has uncovered aren't just facilitating the life-threatening channel crossings carried out by migrants, but that they're allegedly distracting and directing smuggling gangs to, quote, take them to England. So these bombshell claims come from a convicted people smuggler who's decided to speak out. That's him there with the Sun's reporter, and he wanted to talk after the tragic drownings of those 4 folk last week. The man said that smuggling gangs hail the French police as the best in the world, adding the only time the police do anything is when they hear French and they think they are being recorded by a journalist. Otherwise, they tell gangs bon chance, meaning good luck in English. So, Laurence, we're paying France £63 million a year? For what? What are they doing?
Well, they're not doing anything. They're being typically French and passing the problem on to us. And I'm really sorry. I call me old-fashioned, but I think if you want to seek asylum in a country, then you should seek asylum in the country where you first land. And that's how it should be. The reason why people want to come to this terrible racist white supremacist country of ours is because we've got such great public services and great employment opportunities. If you want to do that, then do it legitimately. Don't just turn up on a boat thinking that you can get away with it. And don't use our Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who could be out there looking after our own fishermen, as a ferry service.
No, I know. It just feels increasingly, Laurence, like there is such a disconnect, doesn't it, from the entire establishment, the globalist government and ordinary Brits who just can't stomach this continuing another day.
Well, ordinary Brits have not had a say in politics for as long as I can remember, and certainly in the most heightened way in the last 2 years. Everything is done supernaturally outside of our own will. We've got COP27 telling us, how we're going to be even more poor and immiserated. You've got all of these climate targets, which are not democratically bought in. They're not the will of the people. We're being forced to believe in yet another bogus ideology that will trap us into yet more misery. And I think that the British public should just stand up and go, no. And actually, I think it's fairly obvious with the climate one that people aren't buying it at all. We need to control our borders. We need to create our own energy. And we need to make sure there's freedom of speech on every campus and every university and every institution in this country. And until we've done that, then we cannot tolerate more immigration, and certainly not without a people's charter about what assimilating into British values are like.
No, indeed. Now, Laurence, we know the wordsmiths working on the Cambridge Dictionary don't seem to be all clued up, Laurence, when it comes to science. Because they've updated its definition of a woman to include, quote, anyone who identifies as female, regardless of their sex at birth. So I wanted to point out to you, Laurence, this letter from a group of peers to the Times newspaper addressing the controversy. And they say, we would like them to ponder and perhaps publicly explain how it is possible to, quote, live as female. Is it a matter of doing housework, wearing high heels? The implication that there is a way to live as female is patronising, regressive and a sexist trope that women have fought long to overcome. So, Laurence, this was a very intelligent response, I thought, to this really disturbing decision by the Cambridge Dictionary to start literally changing the meaning of some of our most common words to appeal to the woke agenda.
Well, I mean, isn't it interesting, Dan, that, the suffrage movement fought for years to get the vote for women, and bearing in mind that the working class man didn't have the vote that much before that, that we're now again being run by a bunch of beta males who think that by stamping on the rights of women, stamping on the existence of women and changing dictionary definitions is going to make in any way any difference whatsoever. It isn't. You can change the definition as much as you want, but what you do when you destroy words and the meaning of words is you stop people being able to use them correctly and you encourage them to use other methods to get their point across. And that's how dangerous the manipulation of language is. If you stop people using words, they will use other means to make their points.
No, indeed. And the point is we should be able to rely on the Cambridge Dictionary. I think that's what's so disturbing, isn't it? It's a bit like Elon Musk making the very fair point that we can't trust Wikipedia. And I've known that for a long time. But most of the public think if you go to something on Wikipedia, you're getting a fair and balanced encyclopedic definition or explanation of a word or a person or whoever it happens to be. And in fact, it's totally fixed, Laurence. You can't trust much in Wikipedia either.
I think the internet is inherently untrustworthy because, they're wiping out films from the internet. They're deboosting any sort of opinion which is not right on and woke. But it's the sign of a desperate person who is losing the battle of freedom of speech, which is what they're doing. And they cannot control the internet ultimately, and they cannot control the meaning of the word woman. And you can change what you think in the online dictionary version of the word woman, but every single woman alive today knows what she is. And it's not some man in a wig calling himself Jane, which is going to change the way that people think in this world. But the problem is, culturally, we have an issue. And the issue is that we don't believe in freedom of speech anymore. And unless we start believing in freedom of speech, and that's an appeal to the left, by the way, not an appeal to the right, because the right have always believed in freedom of speech, then we need to, we're going to have mega problems. And this is the very beginning.
It is indeed. Laurence Fox, delivering the Fox Report. Great stuff, Laurence. And of course, Laurence back 7 p.m. Friday night here on GB News. But coming up, as nurses prepare to walk out again tomorrow, who is to blame for the Christmas strike chaos? The unions or the, quote, cold-hearted government, to quote the lefty Daily Mirror? My superstar panel return for that and tomorrow's newspaper front pages in the media buzz at 10. But first, 'tis the season to be jolly scared if NHS fairmongers have their way. Neil Oliver asks if society has been permanently damaged by lockdown fanatics. He's live straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. To quote one of the nation's best-loved festive tracks, it's Christmas time, there's no need to be afraid. And yet Brits looking forward to spending time with their loved ones are still being bombarded with COVID warnings by NHS scaremongers who seem to have made launching a campaign of terror some sort of new Yuletide tradition. NHS doctor Daniel Goyal has been catastrophising in the lefty MSM about a, quote, very concerning rise of hospital patients with COVID during what he describes as the worst healthcare crisis that any of us have ever experienced. Speaking to The Independent, he called for stronger public health messaging about the benefits of wearing a mask and even wants us to wear them at festive family gatherings. So, Neil, the worrying question is, does this show that our society has been permanently damaged by the lockdown fanatics and the COVID scaremongers?
Yes, Dan, I think it's been damaged permanently. I don't know. I'm not sure about permanently, but I think it'll be a long time before we get out of this. If we get out of this, something like a fifth of people are still, I think, polling as being frightened by, continuing to live in fear of being outside or being, with other people. But then, we know that the government quite blatantly deployed nudge units, psychological warfare against the people. They've made little, if any, secret of the fact that there was a deliberate attempt to get into people's heads and to make them, persuade them, trick them, cajole them, frighten them into following a given narrative. So it's hardly surprising that so many people still are displaying the symptoms of the effects. I live in Stirling in Scotland, which is, we're within half an hour of a walk. You're in the countryside from anywhere in Stirling, and when you're out and about, I see people every day in the middle of nowhere in the countryside with masks on. I see people driving their cars with masks on. It's young and old, it's men and women, and yet it still goes on, and we know that the masks are utterly useless, especially in this weather. When you see people walking about in this weather, you can see their breath condensing, around the mask, demonstrating that, wearing a mask to prevent your breath reaching other people, I don't know, it's like using a paper umbrella, but if you're out in a downpour, it's absolutely pointless. And I think the people know that, except there are those who are either, continuing to wear the masks as a sign, a badge of being what they consider to be good people on the right side of some kind of morality. But there are genuinely, I think, those who are frightened. They are positively frightened. And I think it will take a long time. I think there is a cohort of people out there who have been severely affected by the psychological programming. It's just going to be a matter of time, before those people come back to their senses.
No, indeed, you're right, Neil, but I also think we need to talk about the media in all of this too, because we see in the US the left-wing media, the woke media, the New York Times, CNN, who got off on spreading COVID fearmonger into it again. And we see the same thing happen here. And I was alerted to some really fascinating figures, actually, which show trust in broadcasters has absolutely plummeted since 2018. So if you look at Sly News, which had about 62% back in 2018, that has gone down to 45%. So while I completely agree there are lots of people who are still scared, I think a lot of other folk are waking up and actually starting to realise, Neil, that the bad actors in a lot of this is the media, because it's the media that is spreading these messages unnecessarily and actually terrifying people.
Oh, without a doubt, 4/5 of people aren't afraid. That's the point. The majority of people, I think, are whatever they're saying publicly. They know in their hearts, they know in their heads that there was an attempt to dupe them, to fool them. And that's manifesting itself. And yes, but the media is a reflection. Most of the mainstream media is the propaganda wing of the establishment and the government narrative. And they have nowhere to go now but onwards, forwards. They've gone too far. They crossed the Rubicon. They're not going to go backwards and say, we did the wrong thing, we made a mistake, we misled you, we lied to you, we pumped out deliberate misinformation on behalf of the government, on behalf of the establishment to trick you into doing what the establishment wanted. They're not going to do that. So the only way they have to go is straight ahead with what they were doing in the past. I think there's something much deeper when you talk about what's been done to some people, in that they continue to be frightened. I think what it is that some people have been persuaded that they don't own their own lives, that they are actually leasing their own lives, their own futures from the government. The government or the establishment, or whoever you want to call it, have duped people into thinking that they have to buy their lives bit by bit in installments by doing what they're told. It's most clearly manifest in the taking of the boosters and the vaccines. It's this idea that you only own that bit of your future that you have paid for by taking another booster, taking another vaccine. The part of the nudge has persuaded people that someone else, the authorities, the Big Brother owns their lives, owns their future, and they dole it out bit by bit, segment by segment, installment by installment, so long as you continue to do what you're told. And this is manifesting itself in people continuing to wear masks, people continuing to go and get boosters. It's a product of fear. And yes, you're absolutely right. The mainstream media have been behind this, have been in lockstep with it. But I do think, in my optimistic moments, I think that more and more people are turning away from it. More and more people are waking up to the fact that they have been victim to an orchestrated campaign to make them do something largely against their better nature and against their wishes. They have been pushed and psychologically manipulated to do something, but happily, looking into the long-term future, I think more and more people are wakening up to that, and you can see it all around us. And it is making the people who are still under the cosh, who are still under the spell, are becoming more and more conspicuous. And I think more and more people are looking around at the people still wearing masks, still doing and saying certain things, and seeing, yes, I used to be like that, but I'm better now.
Yeah, exactly. No, the New York Times, CNN, The Independent, you are the freaks now. You are the freaks. You wanted us to feel like freaks. Well, you are now the freaks because you have signed up to this untrue narrative, and you're still trying to make people feel afraid. Despicable. Neil Oliver, fascinating stuff as ever. Thank you, Neil. But coming up, are Harry and Meghan using racism to distract from the fact that they've destroyed their own popularity? My star guest tonight, the most cancelled man of 2022, Andrew Tate. He's here at 10:15. But first, amid warning patients will be trapped in hospitals and passengers stuck on planes, are striking workers torturing Brits? That's a big debate in the media buzz straight after the break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview channel 236.
And YouView channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, striking health workers are putting lives on the line this Christmas time, and yet it's the Tories who are cold-hearted, to quote the Daily Mirror. So, with mere hours until nurses walk out again, who's really to blame? The government, as the lefty MSM claim, or the unions themselves? And amid warnings patients could be trapped in hospitals and passengers stuck on planes over Christmas, are striking workers just torturing Brits now? I'll debate that next with my superstar panel. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Suzanne Evans. Plus, after Gary Neville closes the World Cup of Wokery by comparing Qatar human rights abuses to the government's treatment of strikers.
Can't have that. That shouldn't happen here with the wealth that exists, but it shouldn't happen in our country that our nurses are having to fight for an extra £1 or an extra £2 either.
Football legend Matt Tissier is here to tackle England's biggest hypocritical virtue signaller at 10:45. Are Harry and Meghan using racism to distract from the fact they've destroyed their own popularity? And has the Duke of Sussex been emasculated by entering his wife's woke world? Well, my star guest tonight, the most cancelled man of 2022, says yes on both counts.
And we know it's her fault. It's nothing to do with your skin color. We just don't like you.
Online sensation Andrew Tate is ready to let loose at 10:15. You won't want to miss that. And have Harry and Meghan reached new heights of unbearableness by teaming up with the world's biggest whiners?
This was inspired by Nelson Mandela.
We will never forgive you.
Oh, if you can stand it, I'll have a bit more of that in the Media Buzz coming up. Plus, should the BBC be defunded after dedicating an entire podcast series to letting Shamima Begum tell her story? I'll put that to my panel at 10:30. We'll have tomorrow's newspapers for you too, and a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. So do stay up with us tonight. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story tonight, the Prime Minister has praised the selfless dedication and bravery of British troops currently deployed in Estonia. Rishi Sunak has served Christmas lunch to troops with the Estonian Prime Minister at his side as they chatted to UK servicemen and women. The UK has doubled its military presence in Estonia in response to the build-up of Russian forces around Ukraine. Mr Sunak's trip comes as he calls on European leaders to stand firm in their support for Ukraine. And here the Home Secretary says she is committed to the Rwanda deportation plan after the High Court ruled it is lawful. Speaking in the House of Commons today, Suella Braverman said the plan is a humane and practical alternative for those who come to the UK through dangerous and illegal routes. The Royal Courts of Justice ruled the policy is consistent with the International Refugee Convention. Charities have vowed to appeal today's decision, but the Home Secretary says we can't tolerate people coming here illegally.
Being relocated to Rwanda is not a punishment, but an innovative way of addressing a major problem to redress the imbalance between illegal and legal migration routes. It will also ensure that those in genuine need of international protection are provided with it in Rwanda.
Now, a Tory MP has apologised after telling a Bahraini human rights campaigner to go back to Bahrain. It's after the campaigner, who says he was tortured in his home country, made a complaint to the Conservative Party. Saeed Ahmed Al-Waidi alleges the comments made by MP Bob Stewart amounted to racial abuse, and he's also reported the incident to the police. The MP has since apologised and denied his comments were racist. The committee investigating the January the 6th Capitol Hill riots has referred the former President Donald Trump for prosecution. In its final public meeting, it unanimously decreed Mr. Trump should be charged with 4 crimes, including conspiracy to defraud the US and insurrection. The decision is now down to the Justice Department, which can press criminal charges. Mr. Trump has dismissed the allegations he faces as politically motivated, saying The committee is dominated by Democrats, so is biased against him. And finally, a student has been charged with threatening behaviour after eggs were thrown at the King during a trip to York last month. The King and Queen consort were on a trip to unveil a statue in honour of the late Queen when 4 eggs were thrown at the royals, all of which just missed. 23-year-old Patrick Thirlwell has been charged with threatening behaviour under the Public Order Act and will appear at York Magistrates Court next month. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. More now from Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now on Our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with a very first look at the front pages. The Independent reports that officials ignored patients' claims of abuse at a chain of mental health units. The NHS and the Care Quality Control Commission failed to respond to patients and their families who made allegations of abuse. CQC say they will be carrying out a review of group leadership and organisation operations after the allegations. On the eye, heart attack and stroke patients in England will face a postcode lottery on Wednesday after whether ambulances will be able to take them to hospital. Thousands of paramedic and other medical staff will walk out in a dispute over pay, but 999 ambulance responses will depend on where patients live. I just think it's disgraceful. I'm sorry, I do. Soz for being such a moron is the headline in the Daily Star after Jeremy Clarkson was forced to apologise for a column about Meghan in which he professed to hate the Duchess and joked he dreams about people pelting her with excrement. He was referring to a scene on the TV show Game of Thrones. On the front of the Metro, a seriously ill child's mother has confronted Health Secretary Steve Barclay at her hospital bed, telling him the government's NHS policies leave her scared for how long her 3-year-old will live. The Mirror too leads on those comments, running yet another damning headline: you were working nurses to the bone. More on that now, though, with my superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the political commentator Suzanne Evans. So, 'twas the night before a second nurses' strike and the country is bracing itself for yet more Christmas chaos, with ambulance workers, posties, border force and railway staff also getting set for walkouts this week. The lefty rag, the Daily Mirror, has been posing as a pamphlet for the unions of late after their front page today claimed it's cold-hearted Tories putting lives at risk. That headline echoed the words of Unite boss Sharon Graham, who told the paper it's the Health Secretary Steve Barclay who's holding the country to ransom. He will have to carry the can if patients suffer because he thinks this is his Thatcher moment. But while the Marxist barons grapple to win over public support, their seasonal strikes are looking increasingly ill-judged. On the front page of the Daily Telegraph, a senior NHS source made the horrible admission that because of the nurses' walkout, elderly patients will be discharged late and therefore stuck in hospital over Christmas. So, Carol Malone, does the Daily Mirror have any point that this is the fault of the Conservative government when it is literally the unions who are making
it is the unions who are calling the strikes. You know, you talked about nurses there, which I do believe that emergency services should not be allowed to strike. I also believe they should get a set pay rise every year, which is a decent one, but I think no one who worked in an emergency service should strike. However, and the nurses' strike is bad enough, but it's the ambulance workers that are really annoying me because they are using the frailest and the most vulnerable in society as hostages in their battle for pay with the government, which is shameful and shocking. You know, I read a story a couple of days ago how the ambulance workers this week were having meetings to decide how long they would leave an elderly person lying who'd hurt themselves, who'd fallen on the ground, how long they'd leave them before
and it's 4 hours, isn't it?
They decided, so a person could be on a cold ground, in their house, whatever, 4 hours with... Now, this elderly people could... It is sick and twisted. No, you go into a job to help people. Don't go into the job of business of saving lives if you don't care what happens to the people. And it really made me cross today because the GMB boss, Rachel Harrison, she said, ambulance workers, like the NHS staff, are on their knees and demoralised and downtrodden by 12 years of Tory cuts, that's twaddle, because their wages, they have had ambulance workers have had a real terms increase. They've had a 23% pay rise, I was at 28, but they've had a real terms increase of plus 8%. And it's not me saying that, this is the Health Foundation. Said lots of groups in the NHS have had real terms increases, and the ambulance are one of them.
Throwing money at the NHS. Unfortunately, it's going into the financial black hole.
You know, Dan, the ambulance systems have been broken for years, and that's not because of the government, it's because the people who run the system. And there are systems failures all the time, and it's because it's not run properly. They have to sort that out themselves. It's not a question of the government throwing money at it. You know, I think it was somebody in the thing in the paper today saying that since the Tories have been in power, it's gone from 130 billion to the NHS to 200 billion. That's an enormous amount of money. So the Tories aren't cutting money from the NHS; they're giving it to the NHS.
They're actually putting too much in.
There's been a 39% increase in NHS funding since 2010, allowing for inflation. Tory cuts is a myth.
Yes,
they've not happened.
But the problem is it's not working. Now, Benjamin Butterworth, I believe you support these strikes. So how will you feel if it's one of your friends, if it's one of your relatives who has left on the floor for 4 hours?
I mean, what I think is happening here is that these NHS workers are being gaslit to say that them complaining
the
about
police
the fact...
can't strike. The police can't strike.
Those people complaining about the fact that they can't pay their basic bills or feed their kids because they're not paid enough after a very hard day's work. That is a consequence of the problem, not the problem itself. You know, what we're looking at here is Schrodinger's nurse. Too essential to be allowed to strike, but apparently too disposable to be paid
should the police
properly.
be able to strike?
Well, I mean, I think that nurses should certainly be allowed to strike.
No, but should the police?
Why do you think...
I think there should be allowed mechanisms to strike, yes.
When you say nurses should be allowed to strike, why... You know, last week people missed cancer treatments. Do you think that's OK?
But no, of course I don't think it's OK. But the root of the problem isn't that they have gone on strike. The root of the problem is that they can't look after themselves on the amount they are being paid. And to suggest that people should go to work in a highly stressful, highly responsible job and not get the money at the end of it to be able to pay for a basic standard of life. The problem with £29,000 is the average salary.
Nonsense.
It is.
It is not.
£29,100.
It is not. It's 32,000. Plus they get increments and they get benefits and they get pensions on top of all of that. It's nonsense. I'll tell you 29 might be the starting salary. It's not the average.
I looked up before we came on air what they pay. Yeah. 27,000 starting salary, average 34. After 5 years, if you pay your cards right, you earn over £100,000 a year.
Yeah. But by the way, that are striking on 100k is obviously not true.
Some of them will be.
Some are. I think it's OK, though, to say that I absolutely believe nurses should be paid more, while also saying I think it is absolutely irresponsible to go on strike and absolutely irresponsible to allow your union to ask for 19% pay increases, which would send us into an inflation death spiral.
How can you claim to believe in freedom when you don't think that they should have the freedom to collectively bargain to get a better pay?
I don't believe the police should strike, and the fact that you do means that you believe in anarchy.
When you're in the business of...
You do.
When you're in the business of saving lives, you can't go on strike.
It's
it really should be as simple
So
as
you
that.
think that's so essential, and yet they shouldn't be paid sufficiently?
No,
I've just said they should be paid more.
And so do I. I just said they should get a pay rise every year.
But you don't really believe that.
Yes,
because if you
I don't really believe that, do I not?
Because if you really believe that, you wouldn't be opposed to the strikes to try and get the better pay.
Yes, I would, because the people in the bed, the people who are sick and the people who are dying, they're not getting looked after.
You're gaslighting us by saying that if we don't believe in essential services going on strike, that we don't believe in them being properly paid. I'm sorry, the two things are not mutually exclusive.
Dan? Why are they going on strike?
Because they haven't been given a 19% pay increase.
No,
you will remember when there were public sector pay freezes, that nurses still received their pay increase,
to be
by
fair,
the way. They're the only profession to do so.
Can I just say about the nurses, they have seen a real terms cut over the past 2 or 3 years in their salary. Ambulance workers, however, have not. They've seen an 8% increase.
And by the way, Carol, they only have 4% public support.
Can I actually stand up for ambulance workers here? Because I have a lot more sympathy for them than the nurses.
Do you?
First of all, they're not ambulance drivers, they're paramedics.
OK.
They're very highly trained, they're very highly skilled. They get paid a hell of a lot less than nurses.
They get paid about 32.
No, they're on an average.
They start a lot lower.
24. They start on 24.
Yeah,
so
starting.
the average is 40. Sorry, the starting starting is 16, the average is the 24. The max they will get paid is 40. So well less than a nurse. And I, for one, am sick of the NHS being always about nurses. Nurses are the ones, and nurses are great, don't get me wrong, but there are other people in the NHS that tend to get forgotten, and I think paramedics are one of those people. They also have an incredibly stressful job.
They do.
They go into sometimes horrendous circumstances.
It is not the government's fault, Suzanne.
Accidents.
It's the way the service is organised. There are systems delays. The handover delays are shockingly bad.
I'm sorry,
That's
but
the
I agree,
government's fault.
the British public to ransom and telling us that our elderly relatives, it makes me feel sick, could be lying on the floor having a heart attack for 4 hours.
Pay them properly for their day's work.
The strike is not the solution.
Is it okay if you die?
And the fact that you think that police should strike, to me, that says you believe in anarchy. Because I believe essential services should continue to work. I really do. And I know that will make me unpopular with nurses and with the paramedics, but I want them to be paid more. I think they should be banned from going on strike. I think it makes me sick. People are dying. People are dying because of this. It's not being reported, but people are dying.
People are dying because you have a vacancy rate in the NHS of 10.1%, 132,000 vacancies, which is as high as it's ever been.
I don't think you're hearing me. And I've just said I think nurses should be paid more.
The people who are leaving...
to be a reasonable conversation about that, and asking for 19% is not reasonable. And by the way, Benjamin, I'll ask you the same question as last week. Do you believe that nurses should receive a 19% pay increase?
Well, I heard you talking about this for days after last week's show when I was at home watching.
Just a yes or no.
So you're talking about...
Just a yes or no. Just a yes or no.
No.
Yes or no answer. Do you believe nurses deserve a 19% pay increase? It's a yes or no question.
And I think they should get an inflationary relevant rise.
Because you don't believe they should get 19%.
But the reason that 19%...
So actually, you agree with the government.
The reason that 19%...
I rest my case. Benjamin Butterworth, Suzanne Evans, Carol Malone.
I'm going to walk out of the show before
Christmas. Should the BBC finally be defunded after dedicating an entire podcast series to defending Shamima Begum? My superstar panel return for Media Buzz Part 2 at 10:30, and we'll have more of the newspaper front pages then too. But next, are Harry and Meghan using racism to distract from the fact they've destroyed their own popularity? And has the Duke of Sussex been somehow emasculated by entering his wife's woke world? The most fearless man on the internet, Andrew Tate, gives his verdict. He's live in the studio straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Time now for the most cancelled man of 2022, Andrew Tate. And such was his turbulent year. The man they call Top G was kicked off not only woke-ridden social media, but banned by banks and even Uber for his outspoken views on everything from masculinity and women to COVID and the trans debate. Now, Tate got his first taste of fame and cancellation, actually, here on British TV, Big Brother, in 2016, when he was kicked out of the house after private sexual clips of him and women surfaced online. A self-made multi-millionaire since then, Tate has also been a world champion kickboxer and now says he wants to uplift men by helping them live rich, successful and self-responsible lives. So it's men like Prince Harry, long accused of being emasculated by Meghan Markle, who Tate supporters reckon need a helping hand.
When a guy falls in love with a girl, his buddies are like, oh my God, he changed. I don't see him anymore. He's always with her. And you blame the girl. Something's changed and it doesn't feel good and you don't like it. And what's the thing that's different? Well, it's all changed when you got here. So it's your fault.
Responding to that Harry and Meghan Netflix wine-a-thon last week, Tate got the left screeching again with this damning assessment that, let's be fair, you won't hear anywhere else on the MSM.
The basic premise is that Meghan and Harry are innocent and the royal family is guilty and bullying them and picking on them, and that England as a whole has bullied them and picked on them. The reason being because they are racist. And we know it's her fault. It's nothing to do with your skin color. We just don't like you.
So Andrew Tate, great to have you here. People are so terrified when talking about Harry and Meghan because they're worried that they're going to be accused of racism. You're clearly not worried about that.
No, I'm not worried about that. I refuse to live in an absolute fantasy and people are dodging around the true issue. I'm a person of color myself, but I don't think that's why I'm inspired to speak the truth. The fact that racism is being used as a justification for the fact that she isn't liked by the majority of people is a cop-out. It's not the case. She does not garner any kind of racism in day-to-day life. She's less dark-skinned than me, and I certainly haven't suffered from any racism. So I don't think race has anything to do with it. I think she's just a dislikable person and is trying to find another excuse for that, for people to treat her that way.
And this fits into one of your bigger narratives, doesn't it? Which is that you're very worried that men today seem to be embracing the idea of being victims. And you say that one of the reasons that you are a resilient human being is because you have lived through trauma, but that trauma actually propelled you to success rather than bringing you down to victimhood.
Yeah, the baseline of masculinity is that bad things are going to happen to you and you're going to absorb them and you're going to use them and to grow into a more competent individual. If you look at what society expects of men and what even females expect of men, they expect a man of competence. And for you to be competent, you have to have lived through some things. To be good at being a man, you have to have had a hard life. If you look at any superhero, his life was hard. This is the reality of it. And I think that the demasculinization of men is a genuine plague we are suffering with in the West. And Harry, in many ways, he's ended up a beacon for that, you know.
So you think he has been emasculated by Meghan?
To a degree, certainly. He certainly lost a lot of the respect of the people and the people who were fans of the royal family. They've certainly lost a lot of their respect. And Meghan has something to do with that. It's certainly the way she talks about the royal family as a whole, the way she talks to him and about him. There's certainly an element of people waiting for him to stand up and say, listen, that's the royal family. You can't talk that way, or you decided to be with me. There were certain things you were expected to do. But he simply just allows her to demasculinize him in public, and everybody feels uncomfortable with it.
People also feel uncomfortable now to have conversations about race because it's so easy for the MSM to accuse you of racism. Now, I grew up believing in a colourblind world, and that's what I was told at school, that we shouldn't actually obsess about someone's race. Now, if you sign up to that philosophy, you're described as being racist. And it feels to me like Meghan has really utilised that.
Well, there are certain buzzwords. There are certain words you can hide behind in modern society which people are not allowed to challenge, and it allows you to have ideas inside of a vacuum where you can develop these narratives that are never directly contested. And racism's one of them. You're completely right. People can just cry racist and you're not allowed to challenge the idea. And I stand up and say, I do not think that the problems with the public perception of Meghan have anything to do with her skin color whatsoever, especially the fact that she isn't even particularly dark. I find it very strange that a lot of the people who are standing up for her, I've seen many liberals, black liberals from all around the world who are standing up for her saying the race card, the race card. Why would you allow somebody to use the race card when they're not genuinely suffering from it? Doesn't that disrespect all the people who actually suffer from genuine racism?
Well, I think it does.
So do I.
Because there are so many contradictions in that Netflix series, because Meghan actually says the only time she ever experienced racism was someone in LA calling her mum, who actually does have much darker skin than her, the N-word. But actually, Meghan said she had experienced no racism herself, yet she enters the royal family and all of a sudden it helps her victim narrative to suggest that she's been a victim of racism. And actually, if you saw her wedding, I mean, the British public completely embraced her.
Well, if the British public had a problem with race, I don't understand how we have a prime minister who's darker skinned than her, a mayor of London who's darker skinned than her. It doesn't even make sense on any level. I would state that England is one of the least racist nations on the planet. And this is one of the things that's kind of detrimental. The people who are obsessed with race and obsessed with racism, constantly calling it out, they in many ways speak it into existence, because most of us, like you said, like yourself, like myself, we don't see color. We treat people with respect, and if somebody's a likable person, they're a likable person, and if they're a dislikable person, they're a dislikable person, and their color has very little to do with it. It's just kind of ironic that nobody else wants to stand up and point out the glaringly obvious, that nobody looks at her and thinks, wow, look how dark-skinned you are. So it's kind of incredible that this is the angle she's going down, and nobody else seems to want to mention it, and I don't understand why.
Well, do you wonder if that is part of the phenomenon of Andrew Tate? Because remarkably now, actually, sometimes pointing out the bleedingly obvious, as you put it, is not possible in the MSM, is not possible on social media, where we have seen draconian restrictions on free speech over the past couple of years.
Yeah, people are scared to say that water is wet. And then I come along and say water is wet, and everybody secretly agrees, and that's why I have such a massive fan base. But I'm pointing out the obvious, and you're right. It's kind of scary that they've manipulated society to a point where we're going to pretend we don't see things and ignore our own eyes because we're afraid to talk. It's kind of scary. I mean, this is an issue about race and the royal family, etc., but you can apply it to many different things where people saw things with their own eyes and were afraid to comment on it. And that's where you truly enter the realms of slavery, when you ignore your own senses because you're scared to speak up and say the truth. And I feel I'm in a semi-privileged position. They've attempted to cancel me. They have failed. I'm financially secure.
And how did you do that? Because obviously for influencers these days, and obviously that means that you're one of these people who is very popular on social media, obviously you are reliant on these big tech platforms a lot of the time for your income. So how did you manage to subvert that when you were cancelled?
Yeah, I was very financially secure before I decided to go loud mainstream on these platforms, so I knew my finances were always secure. And when they tried to cancel me, unfortunately for them, I'd reached a critical mass where people understood what I was saying was the truth and what I was saying was genuinely good for society. And after the last 3 years living through the imaginary pandemic, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I'm going to, the imaginary pandemic and all the other garbage, people are genuinely...
Tell me what you mean by that.
I mean by the fact that I'm not saying that COVID does not exist as a disease. I'm saying that when you control the semantics of situations and control the language, then you get to control how people react to them. If you say pandemic on repeat on the news, then people start saying pandemic. But as a whole, and I ask you this as a genuine question, Did you see a pandemic? Not did you see people in masks, because people wore masks, fine. You saw the news, yeah, everyone saw the news. But did you see with your own eyes a pandemic? Did you see people collapsing in the street? Did you see hospitals overrun? Did you see ambulances running back and forth? No, you did not. You did not see a pandemic.
A pandemic of disinformation coming from the mainstream media, and I think people are waking up to it, but I also actually feel very sorry for folk who still feel frightened, because you've still got the New York Times, you've still got the Independent newspaper, you've still got The Gun, you've still got CNN pushing a narrative of fear.
But this shows how important it is for them to teach us to ignore our own eyes. Because you don't see a pandemic, but you still walk around and talk about a pandemic. Once they can convince you to ignore your own senses, then the slavery is complete. They no longer need to actually change reality. They can just tell you the sky is green and you will sit and you will comply. And that's what they're scared of. They're scared of people like me inspiring people to actually stand up and say, no, I don't see that, and I disagree with it. And my cancellation came at a point where people have lost a lot of faith in traditional media mechanisms. They've lost faith in traditional social media platforms.
They might have helped you.
Well, absolutely, because people have sat and realized they've been lied to, and they're consistently being lied to. And if you want new information and the truth, or even if you just want a different point of view to come to your own conclusions based on polarizing viewpoints, you're going to have to go to different places. And that's why their attempt to cancel me has failed, and people will seek me out wherever I go on the internet because they know I speak the truth.
People who have just heard of you through the mainstream media, though, would say you are racist, you are sexist, you are misogynist.
Yeah, of course they would, yeah. And that's the thing that's so crazy. It's kind of crazy, yeah, they call me racist. I'm mixed race to begin with. And yeah, it's weaponized virtue. If you have any kind of opinion on anything, you're going to have a degree of the population who's upset with your opinion. It doesn't matter if your opinion is the earth is round. There's people out there who believe the earth is flat, and they're going to be genuinely upset with you. So once the mainstream media decides that you are a dangerous person because you inspire people to think, they're going to come along and they're going to weaponize virtue. They're going to choose a buzzword, racism, homophobic, misogyny, some buzzword that you can't argue against. They're going to take it, they're going to slap it on you, they're going to whip it up in the media machine and try and convince the world that you're somehow a dangerous person and you're a bad person and your ideas should be ignored. And they failed with me absolutely and utterly, and people are starting to realize that they simply lie.
And now you're back on Twitter. You were telling me you left the platform when you were first banned with 88,000 followers. How many do you have after a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been back 2 weeks now. I have 2.9 million, I think. So,
is that down to Elon Musk? Was he the person who let you back on?
Yeah, and Elon is truly a hero of free speech, and he understands we were entering a draconian age of it was genuinely scary where we were heading, and now I start to feel like there's some hope. We're putting a crack in the matrix and a crack in the dam, and I think a lot of people are fed up with having ideas forced down their throat. But it's important that we stand up and talk about these things because it's happening on every level, even from the World Cup to this pandemic to ignoring the imaginary race card in Netflix documentaries. There are so many people not pointing out obvious things in the world that it's getting pretty scary to live in this false reality. We need people to just stand up and say, no, this is absolute garbage.
Andrew Tate, so great to have you. Thank you, friend. Here today. Thank you very much. Now, coming up. Was woke hypocrite Gary Neville wrong to compare Qatar human rights abuses to the Tory government's handling of strikes at the Qatar World Cup? No prizes for guessing what I think, but former football superstar Matt Tissier joins me on that at 10:45. But first, should the BBC be defunded after dedicating an entire podcast series to letting Shamima Begum tell her fairy tale? My superstar panel back with me. So are the newspaper front pages. That's in the Media Buzz straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news site now in our Media Buzz. More front pages have just been delivered. Let's get straight to them. The Daily Mail leads with an exclusive. Rishi Sunak has warned striking unions he is ready to hold out against their, quote, unreasonable pay demands indefinitely. Good on him. Speaking to the paper, the PM said he would tolerate months of disruption rather than risk an inflationary wage price spiral. It might fall on deaf ears if that Mail story is anything to go by, but the Daily Express carries a last-hour call from the leader of Britain's nursing union for Sunak to personally negotiate a pay deal ahead of tomorrow's strikes. The RCN's Pat Cullen said workers don't want to down tools. Staying on the strikes, The Sun leads with need A&E, call a taxi, as patients are warned even those who have heart attacks or strokes in some areas. Oh my goodness, this makes me so mad. Will be told to make their own way to hospital tomorrow. We do not have to stand for this, folks. Over to The Guardian. Ambulance strikes threaten lives on 999 patients. NHS boss warns a, quote, huge risk of harm has been predicted and up to 3 days of disruption is expected. The Daily Telegraph reports that the NHS will face meltdown unless strikes are called off after a series of hospitals and ambulance trusts declared critical incidents. Barclay will meet unions for last-ditch talks tomorrow. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Express correspondent Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the political commentator Suzanne Evans. Now, the Liberal lovies at the BBC have announced that British licence fee payers will be funding a new series starring none other than Shamima Begum. The unbelievably titled I'm Not a Monster follows the ISIS bride over a year as she attempts to justify her unjustifiable decision to leave the UK and join the death cult in Syria 7 years ago when she was aged just 15. Here's a taste of what to expect from the journalist responsible, Josh Baker.
The UK government says she's a threat to national security and has stripped her of her citizenship. And so today, she's trapped in a prison camp at the edge of the desert in Syria. For more than a year, I've been travelling there to meet her and hear her story. For the first time, she's given me what she says is her full account of everything that happened. You can hear it all in I'm Not a Monster Series 2, the Shamima Begum story. Coming soon from BBC Sounds and 5 Live.
So that's not a one-off interview, no. This is the BBC commissioning an entire series aimed at young people, presumably coming at great expense, with a view to making British viewers more compassionate towards the terrorist sympathiser who betrayed them. And come the new year, it's going to be hosted everywhere from BBC4 to the BBC Sounds podcast app with an accompanying documentary airing on BBC Two and iPlayer. Unsurprisingly, the announcement has been said to grant a platform, really, for her propaganda. Campaign group Defund the BBC said this is the kind of thing that would be written into a comedy sketch, that the BBC is actually running a PR campaign for someone who is a terrorist. We don't want licence fee payers' money spent on hearing the points of view of terrorists. Carol Malone. This is a new low, even for the British bashing corporations.
It shows how much they despise licence payers, the people who pay for their very existence, because the majority of those people would not want this woman given a platform. You know, Sajid Javid made a decision to revoke her passport because of information he had seen from intelligence services around the world, particularly a CIA report. Josh Baker has been talking to her for a year. She is going to tell him anything that's going to make her sound better and get her back into this country. I would rather believe what a CIA report says, what our the head of our security services said, what the head of our terrorist services have said, and that is she should not be allowed back into this country. And the BBC they're acting as an apologist for this woman who, let's just remind people, you know, she joined a death cult at a time when we were seeing on television pictures of men having their heads cut off, men being burned alive in cages. We're hearing reports of women and children being raped and then buried alive. She joined that cult. She wasn't a stupid girl. She was an A student at school. She got herself out of this country and into Syria. And to pretend now that she was groomed, and that's why she went there. And even if she was groomed down, even if she wasn't, I don't believe for a second, but even if she was, the security services think she is a risk to this country. And people like Josh Baker are trying to make it OK for... You know exactly what this podcast is going to say, don't you? You know how it's going to end. He's going to put a case for her coming back into this country. You know it.
Because the name of the podcast, Benjamin, is I'm Not a Monster. She is a monster. Newsflash.
Well, I mean, I find it extraordinary that a journalist should criticise, questioning and investigating one of the most significant and high-profile cases that we've had in recent years. And if
How about Martin Bashir?
If you have a... Sure, I think that
let's
should
question
be done
him,
too.
yeah.
But if you have a problem with the BBC airing an interview with Shamima Begum...
It's not an interview.
Then why did you air an interview on your own show?
This isn't an interview.
Why did you air an interview?
This is not an interview.
It is. He's been going to meet her for a year.
I've just explained. This is an entire series to tell the Shamima Begum story under the title I'm Not a Monster. So they have absolutely decided...
But hang on.
How they intend to present this woman.
Your intro said it's wrong to give her a platform.
It is.
You gave her a platform on this show. You had her on.
I think you've totally missed the point.
No. I'm pointing out the hypocrisy.
No.
The BBC.
No. I'm not criticising the Times newspaper or the Daily Mail or various other people. I believe you, actually, who have interviewed Shamima Begum and put difficult questions to her. What I'm criticising is a BBC series clearly designed for a young audience to try and present someone who I believe is a monster as not a monster.
She's clearly been a monster.
It's totally different to an interview, Suzanne. Suzanne, this is different.
Know exactly how this is going to play out. We don't. Notwithstanding the title of the piece, I'm Not a Monster, and she, as you say, Dan, she is a monster, and I fundamentally believe she should never be let back into this country. I absolutely agree with Benjamin. This is a legitimate avenue to explore for a journalist and for the BBC, and I don't have a problem with it, to be honest. And I think the other point to make out is that we're all imagining that she's going to come out very well of this. That's not a foregone conclusion. I remember
that seems to me where they're heading.
There was a massive row when Nick Griffin of the BNP was allowed on Question Time. Everyone was furious. Actually, he hung himself, and he barely had any public profile after that, and the BNP went downhill. The same with Anjem Chowdhury. He was allowed to speak on the Radio 4 Today programme.
But can we also say that...
idiot of himself.
But this guy has
lost a lot of public support.
This guy, Josh Baker, has spent a year. He said himself, as the intro, he says, this is the definitive narrative. No, it isn't. This is his narrative, and it's her narrative. I would rather believe the narratives of our intelligence services.
If I don't trust the BBC when it comes to setting narratives. Because look at what their narrative was when it came to Brexit.
Yes.
Look at what their narrative was when it came to COVID. So I'm not going to trust the BBC narrative when it comes to Begum.
I think
Princess
you're
Diana.
I think you're trying to rescue what is actually an anti-freedom of speech and anti-journalism view by conflating your general view of the BBC with this. And the thing is that actually, you know,
No,
Shamima Begum...
because I've just said that it's absolutely fine to interview Shamima Begum. But I'm sorry, we haven't handed her a 10-part series on GB News. I'm Shamima Begum. You must understand they are very different things.
But again,
even for
you're
you,
with somebody
you're
for
being
a year.
disingenuous.
You're with somebody for a year. They take you. You earn their trust. In my experience as a journalist, if you can get people's trust, they're more likely to tell you the truth.
And to
they're
trip
more
up.
likely actually to trip up and expose themselves.
Do you know what?
You
If
must
they
know
were
that.
prepared to call the show The Monster, the Shamima Begum story, then maybe
Shamima
I would...
Begum isn't unique. There are still, regrettably, a great many people who are being radicalised in this country and that go down that avenue. And I think we are better off understanding why and how that happens than pretending it's not there. And I think we're safer in
You're
that
assuming
society.
we have to believe what she says, how it happens. We don't know if that's what
You
happens.
don't have to believe her at all.
Yes, we kind of do.
You don't.
Well, we're
Think
being
what you
asked,
like.
we're being
I
asked to
don't-
believe
I've
that
got a
she's
feeling you
not a
won't.
monster. We're being asked to believe she's not a monster. And I'm
No,
like,
you're not.
Dad,
It's a quote.
I don't
It's a
trust the BBC
No,
anymore.
it's a
I just
No.
don't trust the
Defund
narrative.
them. Defund them, and then they can pay for
We
this
know
type
that
of
won't
thing
happen. If it was
out of their
called
own
I'm a
pocket
Monster,
and see if
maybe
it stands in
we
a
wouldn't be
commercial
talking
sense.
about it.
Now, finally,
Oh,
if you
we're
won't
carrying
get
on
done
our own
with the
here.
sick bucket after Harry and Meghan's royal tell-all on Netflix, I'm afraid to say they're back. This time, they're co-presenting a woke Netflix series called Live to Lead that features some of the worst people from public life, who they reckon have, quote, shaped our world.
This was inspired by Nelson Mandela, who once said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived.
It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead."
And if you choose to fail us, we will never forgive you.
As leaders, we have the keys to create a sense of security and a sense of hope.
Harry and Meghan's Archwell organisation co-produced the 7-part series with the Nelson Mandela Foundation. It premieres on New Year's Eve, but I'm sure you'll think of a better way to see in 2023 than a gushing tribute to eco-extremist Greta and COVID authoritarian Jacinda Ardern. What a cast list. I have to be honest, Suzanne and Carol, you were very angry looking at that,
I
weren't
cannot
you?
stand Greta.
Me neither.
And as for Jacinda Ardern, that woman should be in jail. She should not be leader of New Zealand.
Yeah.
I cannot stand that woman. I cannot stand her.
Suzanne Evans.
We've got that now.
Carol Malone, thank you so much. But coming up, the palace race row between Lady Hussey and Ngozi Fulani seems to have been quashed with an emergency summit. But who has come out of the whole ordeal on top? A right royal Greatest Britain and Union jackass coming up at 10:50. But first, England legend Matt Le Tissier tackles Gary Neville's gobsmacking attempt to derail the World Cup final by comparing Qatar human rights abuses to the Tory government's handling of strikes. Matt Le Tissier, uncancelled in just 2 minutes' time.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. During yesterday's final, pernicious pundit Gary Neville caused outrage with his latest round of World Cup virtue signalling, extraordinarily comparing the British government's reluctance to give nurses a 19% pay increase with the Qatari regime's human rights abuses. Look.
And it is just worth mentioning that we've got a current government in our country who are demonising rail workers, ambulance workers and terrifyingly nurses. So in our country we've got to look at workers' rights, but certainly when football goes now we have to make sure we pick up on workers' rights wherever it goes, because people have got to be equal and they've got to be treated equal. We can't have people being paid an absolute pittance to work. We can't have people in accommodation which is unsavoury and disgusting. We can't have that. That shouldn't happen here with the wealth that exists, but it shouldn't happen in our country that our nurses are having to fight for an extra £1 or an extra £2 either.
I was so furious about this, I wrote a new Mail Online column about it today. If the Qatar World Cup has taught us one thing, it's that the Western demand for woke politics to infiltrate every event is not only exhausting, but exposes our former heroes as hopeless hypocrites. Now, that's given Neville has previously taken the Qatari coin. Here to tackle needly Neville is former Southampton and England ace Matt Le Tissier. And Matt, you and I have always been pretty clear on this. We're actually fine for people to go to Qatar if that's what they wanted to do. The issue is when they turn into virtue signalling hypocrites. And for Neville to equate the Qatari regime, and Matt, we don't need to go into what the Qataris do. We've spoken about it for weeks. We all know, right? They kill people. You can't be gay. You can't live a life as a woman. We know what they do. For him to equate that with the British government's row over strikes, it was so intellectually dishonest.
I think it was incredibly intellectually dishonest. But I think the worst bit for me is that Gary took that opportunity when really the focus should have been on the football. It was the World Cup final. It's the biggest game of the year. He shouldn't really use that platform to then start having a go at the Tory government. I mean, I'm no fan of the Tory government myself, but there's a time and a place, I think, for that kind of criticism. And to equate those two things, I just don't think they're on the same planet, those two issues.
Well, no, and the problem is, Matt, he seems to be acting as a paid apologist now for the Qatari regime because, of course, he has taken millions and millions of pounds from them to cover the event for beIN Sports, which is a Qatari state-owned broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact figures, and you know that is, as we've said many times, that's up to Gary. If he wants to take that money, that's fine. But don't portray it as like you know, I only had two choices. I could either not go, or I could either go and say something about it, or you know, and try and do something about it, or you know, I can stay at home. Well, I said, well, why couldn't you stay at home and speak out about it at the same time, rather than go there, take their money, and then try and speak out about it? There's more than two options in this, Gary, and I think he kind of forgets that sometimes.
Well, the irony is, he said he was going to speak out about it. We actually saw no evidence of him speaking out at all on beIN TV, because presumably they would have just censored it if he did. So the moment he chose to speak out about it, he actually turned it into an attack on Britain, really. I just felt it was really inappropriate. And I agree, it's not really a Tory issue. This, to me, is about patriotism. Don't compare us to Qatar, right? We've got a lot of problems, right? But don't compare us to Qatar.
No, that's exactly right. And I think the issue, really, the real big issue for me was kind of don't use the World Cup, the biggest game of football. Yeah. It was a joyous occasion. You know, it was a fantastic football match.
Greatest match ever, do you reckon, Matt?
Well, it was certainly the greatest World Cup final I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. You know, sadly, I was 2 years too late to witness us actually winning the World Cup in 1966. And I've had a lot of heartache since, but that was certainly the most entertaining World Cup final I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, what an advertisement for your beautiful game, because even I was totally hooked. Matt Le Tissier, it was great. Matt, thank you. We will speak in the new year. Merry Christmas, Matt Le Tissier. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Carol Malone, your GB nominee, please.
Mine is Lady Susan Hussey for graciously agreeing to sit down with Ngozi Fulani. This is the woman who went on national TV and said she'd felt abused and violated because Miss Hussey had asked her a few times what part of Africa she was from. An understandable question, bearing in mind she was in full African dress and it was at a global event. Susan Hussey, I thought, was very gracious. She's apologised, although I'm not entirely sure what she's apologising for, but good on her. She felt she had to do it for the royal family because she's respectful.
Thrown
and she
under
did.
the bus. Yeah, Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, my greatest Britain is Ngozi Fulani.
Oh, you're just trying to wind
You
Carol
are
up.
kidding.
Dear
God.
Because she isn't from Africa, she's from Hackney.
Yeah.
That's what she said in the first place. And the fact that she had the grace and the decency to meet with
Oh,
Lady
please.
Hussey and to try and help lots of people who didn't understand the problem to now think about it, including Prince William, is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Suzanne Evans.
91-year-old veteran Geoffrey Long, MBE, who was forced out of active service in the army when his parachute failed to open. Can you believe it? And since he retired 15 years ago, he's raised over £300,000 for charity and has just completed a 40-mile walk, aged 91.
Good on him. But you know what? Because this is an issue I'm very passionate about, I've got to go with Carol Malone and Lady Susan Hussey as today's greatest Britain, and it makes me happy that Benjamin's shaking his head. Union jackass
Me
time
too.
now. Carol, your nominee.
Mine is Gary Neville pontificating again from his multi-million-pound ivory tower. This, well, you've said it, he had the temerity to compare low-paid migrant workers in Qatar, who are paid about 220 quid a month, to the strikers here in the country. You know, the train drivers are on 70 grand here, but there you go. Anyway, so...
No, totally agree.
Can I just say...
I agree.
Can I just say, you made a very important point when you said he promised he would speak out about those issues in Qatar. That was his justification for taking the money. He never said a word.
He slammed Britain instead. Benjamin?
Not a word.
David Beckham, the former gay icon, who gave, what's the old gay one or whatever the thing is, loved by gays. Not me. You know, he did Attitude magazine cover years ago. Anyway, he went and promoted Qatar, and then he had the audacity to finally say words. He said, it's positive that debate about key issues has been stimulated while taking money from homeless
Suzanne Evans, your nominee?
killers.
Nicola Sturgeon, because this week in the Scottish Parliament, the Gender Recognition Reform Bill is probably likely to become law. So that basically means self-identification. I can be a man tomorrow. Ben
All
can be a
great
woman
nominees.
tomorrow.
I could usually choose any of them, but shock horror, I'm going to go for Benjamin Butterworth and David Beckham as today's Union jackass. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Suzanne Evans, you have all been fabulous. Merry Christmas. I'm going to see you next year. But I am back again tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Headliners next. Good night.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's